This is the NBA Playoff Preview with Adrian Hernandez, only on 1140 The Bet.
Yes, indeed. Here we go, man. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everyone and everything else, welcome to the madness that is the NBA Finals. Finally, we are here. Look, you can smell it. I can smell it in the studio. I can walk outside and go on Rainbow right now, and you can smell it throughout Las Vegas. And that smell, by the way, don't be smart. It's not the throw up from the people getting lit on the Strip or downtown Vegas. It's that championship odor. That's what I can smell because it's filling the country. Matter of fact, it's filling the world because we started the season with 30 teams and we only got 2 left here in the NBA Finals. And let's be clear, because honesty is my key, and I'm never going to lie to y'all, and I'm never going to fake the funk. These 2 teams in this year's NBA Finals in particular are 2 teams that, me personally, I very much dislike. And I'm not afraid to say it. I'm very much hoping for a historic NBA Finals because what I'm hoping for is that for the first time in NBA Finals history, we have our first tie. But that's beside the point. And, it may seem like I'm too hyped in these AM hours on this lovely Saturday if you are listening to us right now on 1140 The Bet Las Vegas. But that's nonsense because I'm going to say it again. It's the NBA Finals, and you're inside your NBA playoff preview. I go by the name of Adrian Hernandez, also, of course, one of the hosts of The Playmakers that airs here on 1140 The Bet, Las Vegas, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. And as we start these shows, and as we've started all the shows, I need to remind you, we do this for you. You are the reason for the show, so we want to hear from you. So right now, tap in with us at Adrian Radio 93. That's Adrian, ADRIAN on Twitter, and the Bet Las Vegas on Twitter. Plus, you can hit me up on Instagram as well at Heavyweight Radio. And we got a big show planned because, what is it again? It's a big show because it's, the NBA Finals. So it's only right. It's only right that we come correct. And just like honestly, just reminiscing on my good fortune of not only being able to go to the 2015 Eastern Conference Finals, but then being able to go to at least one of the games in the 2015 Finals and one of the games in the 2016 Finals, I need to say this. If you can get anywhere near the Finals, and not even just the NBA Finals, because that could get expensive, and trust me, I totally understand. I still don't know how I did it. Well, I know I did it. I used my Pell Grant from college and didn't spend it on my education. I spent it directly on the tickets and the flight to go see it, and I wouldn't suggest that. I mean, I would, but what I have to say, the politically correct thing to say is don't use your Pell Grant on NBA playoff tickets. But I will say, whether it's the NBA Finals or the NBA playoffs, it's an atmosphere like none other. And take it from me, who's been fortunate enough to go to an NBA playoff game. Well, that's the whole point. The MLB playoffs is what I meant. The college football playoffs, a Super Bowl, and some WrestleManias. I promise you, there is no atmosphere like the NBA playoffs. And hopefully, speaking of good fortune, the good fortune of this city will hopefully provide Las Vegas and everyone living here the opportunity of an NBA team that we can call home. As earlier this week, Thursday night to be exact, before Game 1 in the Adam Silver, what are we going to call it? The Commissioner's State of the Union. He was asked before Game 1 in that press conference about some of the rumors of Seattle and here in Las Vegas and getting an NBA team. And I believe, what year was it? 2024, so 2 years away. So we'll get into what he said and kind of get some insight on that. That'll be a little later. It's on the docket today as we start a new era here on the NBA Playoff Preview Show. We've done what? 5, 6, 7, somewhere around there. We have a little bit of a history now here with the NBA Playoff Preview Show and kind of the expectations that you have when you tune in. And now this new era is the era of friendship, like New Day in the WWE, because for the first time, we can now have friends because we got people joining us for a second time in our little show's history. And joining us today is the one and only, he's the lead writer from Sports Illustrated, Howard Beck, one of the best in the business, is here to talk about a lot of things. Specifically, though, is a new story, a new piece that he did. It dropped this Wednesday ahead of the NBA Finals. And despite my feelings towards the Warriors and despite my feelings towards this player, it's probably the most entertaining and informative piece ever done on Steph Curry in his entire 13-year career, And kind of put that in perspective for a second. When I'm saying that about someone who is reached, this man has reached superstardom, and this piece that's entitled, by the way, if you want to go look it up, from Howard Beck, once again, it's titled One of One, is simply fantastic, and I highly recommend you checking it out. We'll get some insight on that piece, plus his reaction to Game 1 of the NBA Finals as Boston stole one on the road, and once the road team wins in the series, it is officially began. So we'll talk to him about Game 1 and also, of course, some of the things he's looking forward to in the series and his reaction to Adam Silver and everything going on with the rumors about an NBA team here in Las Vegas. But not only that, it's always good to have one friend, but it's better to have two friends, you know what I'm saying? To get you a little trio, a little squad yourself. So joining us is friend of the show from ESPN and Around the Horn and from so many other things. It's Justin Tinsley. He's going to join us to talk about the Warriors and Celtics. And he also, because this was pre-recorded so I can give you a little bit of insight, he had some crazy, super nuts predictions regarding the off seasons of some of these Eastern Conference teams. So whether you're listening live on 1140, The Bet Las Vegas, on that Odyssey app, or wherever you get your podcast, let's begin the program. And we start with the Warriors. Bruh, yo, what are y'all doing? What's going on? Who made these decisions for y'all? Why did y'all do what you did in Game 1? Matter of fact, nah. Let's be fair. I want to start from the beginning of the game. Boston, what are you doing? What type of philosophy? Who in the locker room or the coaching staff was like, look, here's the deal. They got Steph Curry on that team, all right? The best shooter of all time, a 2-time MVP, 3-time champion, 0-time finals MVP, which we'll get to here in a second. Let's leave the greatest shooter of all time completely open. You know what I'm saying? Nobody get within 5 feet of him. And what happened? Steph Curry went nuclear. If you haven't heard by now, set a record in the NBA Finals, 6 3-pointers in 1 quarter. He set a record for himself, 21 points in the first quarter, was a new high in his playoff career for Steph Curry in terms of scoring in a quarter in a game in the playoffs of the NBA Finals. The Warriors ended the first quarter on fuego. They shot 48% from the field, 53% specifically from the 3-point line. But here's the thing. Steph goes crazy. The shooting percentages are off the charts. Unbelievable. Remarkable. The Celtics were still down only 4. And I want to focus on the Warriors really quick. And more specifically, I want to focus on Steph Curry. Because if he wins this, he's entering uncharted territory. The team itself, 6 finals in 8 years. We haven't seen that since the 90s with the Bulls. Not even the Spurs have done it. The only other team, and it's not a team, it's just one player, to do anything close or more is LeBron James. And so if Steph Curry wins this championship, he ends up with these dudes like Shaq, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Hakeem Abdul-Jabbar, all these dudes, Will Chamberlain, I believe, the room, the access to be allowed to walk into that room is few far in between in NBA history. And he doesn't have a finals MVP. It's kind of strange. And I want to get to that in 1 second. But when it comes to Game 1 specifically, I just told you it was on fuego. It was on fire. 21 points in the first quarter. Explain to me how at home, to set the tone, when you're the best player on the court unquestioned, despite, I know he's had injuries this year. I know this has probably been the toughest and the quote-unquote worst he's been because of the injuries. But to only get 13 points the rest of the game, to in an NBA Finals game, play in a quarter and not have any points like he did in the second quarter, to only have one 3-point shot made in the second half is unbelievable. And if we need to put him into these rooms, we need to get real scientific. We need to get a microscope out and we need to look through some things. Because here's the thing. Steph Curry at home in the NBA Finals without Kevin Durant, that loss on Thursday night was the 6th home game loss in the NBA Finals in Steph Curry's career. 6 losses at home in the finals in a row without Kevin Durant. Do you mean to tell me that if Kevin Durant, and probably the biggest one who'd get the most crap thrown his way, LeBron James, went through some of those performances, we'd be as quiet as we've been? 6 home games in a row. Steph Curry has 3 championships. I'm going to give that to him. The first championship in 2015, he faced LeBron, and then Kyrie got hurt in overtime of game 1. Kevin Love wasn't there. It was LeBron, Matthew Dellavedova, Iman Shumpert, Tristan Thompson, Timothy Mozgov. Like, Timothy Mozgov recently called me to see if I wanted to switch to State Farm insurance in my car. Like, this is the type of dudes we're talking about. And then the other 2 championships, you got Kevin Durant, one of the greatest scorers of all time. And without that, the success in the finals, in the biggest moments when the lights are the brightest, has not shown up. You need to pull your team together in a close game where you have the lead, where he was on the bench to start the fourth quarter. The Celtics were down by 12 points to start the fourth. He sits on the bench for 3 minutes, and that lead goes from 12 to 5. He comes in to stop the bleeding. And for the next 5 minutes of him being on the court at home in a tough game, he didn't score. The entire team didn't score. Boston held the Warriors scoreless for a almost 6-minute run in the fourth quarter in the most important parts. And if we remember last year, in the play-in game versus the Grizzlies and Ja Morant at home, last home game in Oracle Arena, Steph Curry allowed Ja Morant and that young Grizzlies team to beat him to not even make the playoffs. The year before that was the worst season in his career. They didn't make the playoffs. Kevin Durant gets hurt. He can't beat the Raptors against Kawhi, who was also hurt. All I'm saying is that some of this and some of this greatness and some of these accolades is looking funny in the light. And I don't want to just throw things his way because I love the dramatics and I love the arguments. To me, it's the best thing about basketball. To me, another thing that kind of threw me off is Draymond Green, who after game 1 went to the locker room, did the post-game press conference and was talking about, that game we dominated for 41, 42 minutes. Well, guess what? The Celtics dominated the Miami Heat. When you look at the box score, there were only 3 quarters in that entire series that won 7 games that Miami scored more points than the Celtics. That's all it takes, is to win 48 minutes. And like I just said to start the show, in game 1, after the end of the first quarter where Steph Curry scored 21 and went berserk, they were only up by 4. At halftime, the Celtics had the lead. So explain to me where Draymond Green gets the 41 and 42 minutes. And by the way, Draymond, I know you got your podcast and you're running home to do it and Colin Cowherd's paying you money and you're the age of new media here. New media is the new phrase that they're throwing around with some of these players in the NBA. Draymond, you talking hella spicy. Hella spicy. You were dreadful. You had 4 points. You went 2 for 12. You went 0 for 3 from the free throw line, including 2 terrible bricks that were loud as hell in the fourth quarter. That's how bad you missed. The Celtics the entire time dared you to shoot. And you couldn't be the facilitator that you were because they were leaving you open. They were daring you to shoot. And now for the first time in Warriors history, and it's a serious problem that I want to see what the adjustment is, they had Draymond Green and Andre Iguodala who came back out of nowhere. That's a great gig to just be able to come back to play in the NBA Finals and like played none of the other games. To be honest, I'm not being sarcastic. That's lit, okay? But for Andre Iguodala and Draymond to be in the court at the same time, you have two dudes that the best defense in the league in the Celtics can now sag off on. So if Steph Curry wants to do what he's best at and one of the best player in the history of the league in terms of moving without the ball and the damage and the attention that he gets is unquestioned. But he can't do that when there's two dudes on the court who can't hit anything other than bricks, which is a huge problem. And also, since we're talking about the Warriors and some of the things that they need to work on, Jordan Poole, too, offensively, these past two series, really, if you check the box score, you look at the game log, they haven't been anything spectacular. And what happened game one is he was attacked on that defensive end, and he was being targeted, and Steve Kerr had to take him out the game. So that's another dude who can score and is also a defensive liability. And now comes the adjustments that Steve Kerr needs to make to see if he can have enough offense on the court and enough defense to take on the Celtics. Because another thing that Draymond mentioned is the three-point shooting of the Celtics. Granted, Al Horford, Derek White, Marcus Smart went 15 for 23 from three. That's a crazy percentage. That may not happen again, but one of the things I want to bring up is, number one, a lot of those shots, especially Al Horford's, Al Horford was wide open for those. And I think he's going to make wide open shots. I ain't crazy. Ask Steph Curry because he was wide open too, draining them. And number two, even if they don't perform up to that crazy expectation of going somewhat close to 15 for 23, Jayson Tatum, their superstar, only had 12 points that game and went 3 for 17. And at home in your championship run where you're trying to prove that y'all can do it without Kevin Durant, you guys lose? They got problems. And if I'm being dramatic, we'll find out next. Because coming up, my guy Howard Beck from Sports Illustrated joins us. Hold on, let me just say it all over again. Howard Beck from Sports Illustrated joins us. I told you, I know it's early in the morning, but it's the NBA Finals. We kind of excited over here, all right? It's 11:40 The Bet Las Vegas. Hey, it's 11:40 The Bet Las Vegas. Welcome back to the NBA playoff preview. Although we may need the fancy voice guy to change it up to the NBA Finals preview. Nevertheless, one of the best who covers the NBA. He's a senior writer for Sports Illustrated, co-host of the Crossover Pod, an analyst for Sirius XM NBA Radio. Howard Beck joins us for the second time, so I guess we can add friend of the show too. Insider Calls powered by BetQL. Bet smarter and beat the books. Download your BetQL app today or visit BetQL.com. Howard, the NBA Finals are here. Game one is in the books. How excited and how are you?
Glad to be back. Glad to be a friend of the show. The first game was it delivered, man. In a postseason where we have had some duds, some series that never really got on track, some general weirdness over the course of the postseason. This one delivered. I thought it was a great game, great atmosphere at Chase Center for the opener Thursday night, and obviously a disappointing one for the home crowd. But that game gave you a little bit of everything, right? Steph just lighting it up in the first quarter with 21 points and setting records, and then the two teams combining for the 3-point record in the finals, combined threes. The Celtics with that kick in the fourth quarter and just shutting the Warriors down along the way. There was, from a pure basketball standpoint or entertainment standpoint, it was a pretty enjoyable opener.
No, 100%. And before we get into game one, real quick, I want to touch base because you just released an article, a huge story on Steph Curry and him being one of one. First off, phenomenal job. And, in the story, you say, yes, he's the greatest shooter of all time, but that sells him short. And even Draymond Green saying, Steph and his ideology has kind of changed the game. And as I'm reading this, I'm thinking to myself, like, in totality of everything that Steph brings, not only the shooting, the movement, the impact, the attention that the defense needs to have, in totality, are we truly really going to appreciate Steph Curry when it's all said and done in the history books?
It's interesting, and thanks for the kind words on the story, which people can, of course, read at si.com. In reporting on it, one of the things that kept coming up from others around the Warriors was, listen, yes, Steph is bigger than just, being the greatest shooter of all time. Yes, he deserves to be talked about among the all-time greats. But, by the way, if people aren't and don't appreciate it yet, just give it a little time because, one, he's not done yet. We're not done yet. And it may take some time before people's understanding of this era of the game and Steph's impact on it evolves to a point where we can say, oh, man, you know what? Now, maybe after he's gone, right? I think Draymond is the one who said it to me at one point that, give it another 10 years and we realize, when people are starting to miss him and they realize there's not another one coming along, or there's going to be others coming along who are going to try to do what he did but just can't do it as well. Just as when, Michael Jordan left the game and everyone was trying to be Michael, but nobody could carry that. Nobody could approximate it, although Kobe came as close as anyone. And so it's interesting. There are still more chapters to be written for Steph Curry, and that will ultimately perhaps affect how everyone perceives him. But the reason I set out to write that story, and the main premise, of course, was just the idea that because Steph does not look like any stars or the superstars, the all-time legends who came before, it's hard for people to process his impact on the game, his place in the pantheon, if you will, because he's 6'2", and he does, his greatest attribute, though far from his only one, is the three-point shooting. But he's also really great in the mid-range, and he's a great finisher, and he's a great ball handler, and he does all these other things at a very elite level that get overlooked because of his shooting. But, when we talk about the all-time lists, and it's always – there's the GOATs at the top, Jordan and LeBron and Kareem and whoever else people want to discuss there. Then you've got that other group of players, the Bill Russells and Wilt Chamberlains, all the giants of the game, and Shaq and Hakeem, and you've got Kobe, Magic, Bird. They're all taller, and they all won with some combination of strength and size, physicality, eye-popping athleticism. Steph doesn't look or play like any of them, and that's why I think people have a hard time processing that he could be, and I think should be, talked about along with those guys.
And Howard, this next question, I have to bring it up because I've talked about it on my show, and we actually haven't talked about it. I'm born and raised in Cleveland, so yes, this question might be a little bit biased, but when you look at Steph, the greatest player in the franchise of the Warriors and its history, he's been a part of the 3 championships. Is it weird that he hasn't won a Finals MVP? Is it just kind of weird that he hasn't had that moment in the finals?
No, it's not to me. It's weird if you want to put it in just like the basic terms of like, hey, the other all-time greats all have this, right? It's rare for somebody to not have it. Kobe won his first 3 championships alongside Shaq, and Shaq got all 3 of those MVPs. It wasn't until Kobe led a different team with Pau Gasol and Bynum and those guys and Odom till he got his MVPs. But there aren't, for the most part, when you talk about the all-time greats, yes, if they've won championships, they get Finals MVP. Steph's just all the other ways that, in addition to all the other ways in which his career is just really unique, this is unique also. But I don't think it's unique as a negative. You have to look at the context. What was the context? Well, in year 1, their first championship, the insertion of Andre Iguodala into the starting lineup changed the series. The Warriors, everybody seems to have forgotten, were trailing 2-1 to the Cavaliers in that series, and Iguodala being inserted into the lineup and being their primary defender against LeBron. LeBron had a dominant series, but not efficiency-wise. He had a dominant series numbers-wise, and he certainly kept the Cavaliers in it. And so the change, the impact that Iguodala made just had a really big impact also on how people viewed, the course of the series, who was most important in the series, all that stuff. And Steph's numbers in that series were good, but they weren't dominant. He didn't have a dominant finals. And so that happens. Iguodala gets 7 votes. LeBron James got 4 votes. I was one of the LeBron voters. And
Thank you for that, Howard, by the way.
Well, I mean, I stand by it. I mean, I have absolutely no qualms. Didn't at the time and don't now. I think, if Finals MVP is, and I know no one's won it from the losing team since Jerry West 1,000 years ago, but if you're going to say it's for the player who had the biggest series, I thought LeBron from start to finish had the biggest series, and so I'm fine with that. The 7 people who voted for Iguodala, should they have voted for Curry instead? Because even if Iguodala had the impact that he had, Curry is the one who's the driving force of that team. That's a fair argument, and it's certainly one that Warriors fans have been making for years now. And then, of course, the other 2 championships, it's after Durant comes on board. Durant was clearly the Finals MVP in those other 2. But Steph has been back-to-back MVP in the regular season, first ever unanimous MVP in the regular season. He's done everything else you could possibly do. Like, I don't think he needs Finals MVP for any reason. Is it a weird absence on his resume? I guess, but I don't think it's that critical given everything else that he has done in his career. And we'll see if the Warriors can win this championship. I think there's no question he'll end up being MVP if they win it. So maybe we won't be having this discussion again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, right. And I will say, to be fair, like in kind of one of the points that I got out of your article, which again you can read at si.com, is that his greatness is kind of like a hockey assist. Just him being on the court kind of impacts everyone else and makes everyone else better. And I know we're short for time, so a couple more questions before we get you out of here. One thing I wanted to ask you is, so Draymond Green, after the game, his post-game comments about the Celtics and, the mature standpoint of they've been there before and them talking about, look, the Celtics shot lights out from 3. But at the same time, Jayson Tatum also had a 3 for 17 game. So do you kind of think moving on in the series that, yes, if the Celtics and the rest of these guys don't shoot as good, it's kind of going to average out where Jayson Tatum is going to give you a better offensive output?
Hard to say. I think one of the things that, you learn after covering, a lot of these finals and a lot of postseasons in general is that every game is its own its own entity, it's its own animal, and none of these, like, there's sometimes things carry through and sometimes they don't. And with what seems like a trend for one game is does not make a difference the next game. I would expect that the Celtics probably won't shoot as well from 3, to your point. I would expect that Jayson Tatum won't shoot or perform as poorly as he did in Game 1, to your point. And maybe those things offset each other, and for the Celtics, it still ends up in another win in Game 2. But, nothing's ever that simple.
Right.
Teams make adjustments. Guys get hot, guys cool off, somebody else gets hot, who knows? I think from the Celtics standpoint, obviously they have to be happy with every aspect of it. That they could win a game on the road, in Game 1, in fact, and come back from 12 down in the fourth quarter to win it with hot shooting, and despite their best player not having a good game, I think they're beyond thrilled with that. Ime Udoka's job now is to make sure they're not too thrilled with that and that they don't let up in Game 2, because the only thing better than, getting that 1-0 lead would be, of course, to steal 2 and then go back to Boston. So, but, look, I think everybody would expect, amongst the commentariat that, the Warriors will come back with a strong Game 2, that they won't allow that to happen again. They played pretty well overall. They had obviously some untimely glitches, and, turnovers came back to haunt them, as they've often done, especially in that fourth quarter. But we'll see. We'll see how it unfolds in Game 2.
And then, Howard, our last question here, and probably much importance here to all of us here in Las Vegas, to be honest, my career. Adam Silver yesterday was asked about the league expansion, specifically the rumors about Seattle and Las Vegas in 2024. He said they weren't true. He said it's not being discussed at all. To me, I find it extremely hard to believe, but obviously I might be a tad biased being here in Vegas. But how do you see the future playing out?
I think the NBA certainly is intrigued by Vegas. I think the NBA certainly would love to be back in Seattle, and certainly there's a logic to the idea that they could be or should be in both of those cities. But I thought Adam said something really important at his press conference, which is something that I myself have been saying for years, and I did not think that anybody at the league office shared my view of this, but it was interesting to hear that Adam, in fact, has this same sense of it, which is that for all the talent around the world and for all the growth of the game, the fact is the guys who make the biggest difference in this game are those top 10, top 15 players. And you can add 2 teams and 30 more players, and, yeah, they'll be high-quality players. but they're not going to be Kevin Durant and LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Jayson Tatum, Steph Curry. They're going to be a bunch of really solid role guys. And it doesn't matter, you could get tons of those guys into the league. It's fine. But the game is driven by, and ticket sales are driven by the superstars and the all-stars. And he did say, and I'm kind of giving you my version of it, but what Adam said was basically he does worry about the dilution of talent, that if you're going to add two teams, he worries about the dilution of talent. And I think that should be the NBA's biggest concern. There's a huge lucrative aspect to this. If you add two teams, and the fees you're going to be able to charge those new ownership groups to come into the league are split between all the existing teams, and they'll make a bundle up front. But now you've also got to divide the revenues between 32 teams instead of 30, going into the future. And so there's that aspect too. But he talked about dilution of talent, which I thought was really interesting, because it means that his basketball people have been telling him, look, if we do this, there will be a hit to the product. Some of these teams, there's already teams every year that just don't have anybody to hang a hat on. Yeah. And now you're going to add two of them. So I think I personally do not think the NBA should expand. I think if they want to get to Seattle or Vegas, move teams that are underperforming somewhere else.
There it is. I guess Summer League is all we're going to get, Vegas. All right. Howard, thank you for the time. Once again, senior writer for Sports Illustrated. His story on Steph Curry, one of the best that's been done throughout Steph's career. You can check it out. It's called One of One, SI.com. He's also the co-host of the Crossover Pod and an analyst for Sirius XM NBA Radio. Howard, as always, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Adrian. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back. Nothing but good vibes, man. That NBA playoff preview, of course. Game 2, NBA Finals, Warriors, Celtics in San Francisco at the Chase Center tomorrow night. So we're getting you ready for it. And once again, one more time, shout out to Howard Beck for coming on. One of the best in the business from Sports Illustrated. His podcast, The Crossover Pod, is phenomenal. And also, Sirius XM NBA Radio. And his story on Steph Curry, One of One. You can go check that out now. It just dropped earlier this week. A phenomenal read. SI.com. It's called One of One. And from Howard Beck, we head over to the four-letter network. Yes, ESPN, from shows like Around the Horn and his new book, Biggie and the World That Made Him. Shout out to the notorious B.I.G. I'm talking about Justin Tinsley. Yes, that man that I'm pretty sure you've seen if you've heard about Around the Horn on ESPN. We did a full interview with him about his book, and then at the end, we got into the NBA. So if you want to listen to the full interview, be sure, if you're listening on the Odyssey app, check through the Playmakers feed. It's there, it's available, and I hope you enjoy. And here's the tail end of that interview where we really get into the NBA. Justin Tinsley, Adrian Hernandez at NBA Playoff Preview, 1140 The Bet. Enjoy. We love to see it, and it's good for you to get your roses, while everything's happening and as it's going on, because this book, like you just said, it's been out for a couple weeks. I'm going to say it again. You could go get it now wherever you get your books. It was all a dream, Biggie and the World That Made Him. And I don't want to make my boss mad, so here's the I feel just bad because let's talk about the playoffs. Although these blowouts are kind of they're killing my vibe. But I need to ask you. I'm born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, right? And I'm a diehard Cavs fan. I was at the Gund Arena when it was Darius Miles and DeJohn Wagner for $5, and then we fast forward to 2015, 2016. I'm using my Pell Grant as I'm going to school in Florida to fly back for the finals and stuff. So I'm heavily invested in Cleveland and my Cavaliers in particular. So with that being said, do I need to kind of, give up my hate and my rivalry with the Warriors because it's been so long, or do I still keep it alive?
I mean, look, I am not going to sit here and tell you what to do with your fandom, but put it this way. If I'm a Cavs fan, and, that 2016 finals will always be one of the craziest sporting, series that I've ever seen in my life.
Most important NBA championship of all time, anyway.
Yeah, that was crazy. And LeBron is my favorite player, and so that's another conversation for another time. But if I'm a Cavs fan, and the way it looks right now, crazier things have happened. Is like you said, it looks like it's going to be Warriors Celtics.
Ugh.
I would rather see the Warriors win than the Celtics, just because the history between especially the LeBron related history between the Cavs and the Celtics, like that runs deep.
But here's the thing, and I don't mean to cut you off. Here's the thing, though.
Yeah.
Boston fans in general, like in person, right? In person, they're very annoying, and there's a lot of them. And just watching their games, their home games, make me just very uncomfortable for reasons that we don't have to get into. But then the Warriors on the flip side, granted, I'm here in Vegas, and like you're either a Warriors or Lakers fan for the most part out here. But
yeah,
the Warriors, they ain't as braggadocious in person, but on Twitter, they're just as loud.
Man, yeah.
Warriors Twitter is a little too much, so this is why it's so difficult for me.
I thought the crazy thing is I picked Miami in 6, which obviously is not going to happen now. The best that can happen is Miami in 7, but it will be fascinating to see if that actually is the finals, right? If it actually is Golden State Boston, and the fan base is notwithstanding, you just talk about the actual teams. It will be interesting to see if Boston's defense can control Golden State's offense. And by that, I mean, like, Golden State has always been, at least for the last decade, has been like an offensive juggernaut, right?
100%, free-flowing.
Different iterations and fashions. Whether it was just the young Steph, Clay, and Draymond, and then they added KD, and then now it's kind of like this current version where they're getting the best out of Andrew Wiggins. Like, Jordan Poole is playing his way into a huge contract.
Yeah.
Kuminga is a great asset off the bench. Like, they're deep now. They're deeper now than they've ever been. And to the fact where, like, Andre Iguodala doesn't even have to play anymore. So it will be interesting to see if that Boston defense, which is everything it is built to be, if they can put enough bodies on enough shooters. Because what I think Golden State would do, and this is if it's the finals. I'm not guaranteeing. Nobody's ever come back from 0-3, and I don't think Dallas is going to come back from 0-3 on this Mavs team, on this Warriors team. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Draymond on Jayson Tatum, or would they put Wiggins on Jayson Tatum, because Wiggins is guarding Luka at this point. Now, granted, Luka is still getting his points, but he's having to work for him. So, if you're a Cavs fan, that's probably the worst. That's the worst possible finals.
It really is, man.
From an X's and O's standpoint, it's actually quite fascinating.
No, 100%.
I think Ime Udoka is a great coach. I think he's done an incredible job with this team. Jayson Tatum is making that turn. And it's crazy to believe that Jayson Tatum is already a veteran in the NBA, and he's only, 24?
Yeah, he's been in the league for 6-7 years already.
He's been in the league for so long. So, yeah, man, I hate to break it to you, but it's really looking like that's going to be the finals. Miami could win these next 2 games, but the thing with Miami is they need scoring when Jimmy Butler can't provide that for them. And Kyle Lowry, I know he's been battling injuries. He hasn't really provided that scoring punch. Bam had a great, what was that game?
Just game 3, that's it.
Yeah, game 3. Yeah, he had a great game 3. And Jimmy Butler, I believe, is built for the moment, but I know he's battling injuries and he's trying. But I will say this, and I don't know anything. I don't have no insight about anything. At least not on this. I do have insight, but just not on this. You saw Joel Embiid on Twitter last night, right?
Yes, I did.
And you saw what he said, like, Miami needs another star.
You don't think he's going to be the one to move?
Look, I'm not saying anything, but that Philadelphia, and I said this on Around the Horn, especially once Philly burned out the way that they did in that second round. They're going to. I thought the Lakers are going to have the most interesting offseason in the NBA. It might be Philly, bro. It might be Philly because I don't see how Joel Embiid can be happy in the situation that he is right now. Like, this dude, for one, I don't know how he made second team All-NBA, which is wild to me, and he led the league in scoring. But, you know, his prime years are being wasted right there. And you got to, like, if we're feeling like this, and I have no connection to Joel Embiid whatsoever, but it'll be really interesting to see how they win his confidence back, because his confidence in that organization can't be like 100% right now. And it never is, like, when you lose in that fashion, but like, he carried that team through an incredible season where it was just storyline after storyline after storyline. And then the James Harden trade, it just did not work out in the way that they thought it would. But, like, is Philly going to offer James Harden a max contract?
I hope
really
not.
Do you really want to pay a 37-year-old James Harden $60 million in the 26-27 season?
Yeah.
Do you?
I mean,
but if you don't, then, you know, who you gonna get for Joel Embiid? Like, he's in the prime of his career right now, and you saw what Jimmy Butler said after they beat Philly in that second round. He was like, "I miss playing with Joel. I miss him. Like, I love Miami, but I do miss him. Like, there's a deep respect there. Look, I don't know anything about anything, but this is the NBA, man. Crazier things have happened.
Well, and you bring it up, and you know, it's Pat Riley. If someone's going to finesse it and make it possible.
Man, look, it's Pat.
Yeah, Pat, especially now that, you know, Pat's getting older. So Pat's always swinging for the fences because he doesn't know how many times, you know, how many more at-bats he has. Although I didn't think ever that Joel would be the one to leave, but that may, like you just said, it's the NBA. And people have been talking to me crazy around here, and not that, you know, it does sound a little bit crazy, but I was like, I will not be surprised within the next 2 years if Jimmy Butler is not on Miami. A part of that is I think Pat Riley will swing for the fence if he feels like there's a different player. And, you know, obviously they had that squabble with Spoelstra towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
But I just think that Miami's kind of cutthroat, and, you know, Jimmy runs into problems, and Eric Spoelstra is very rigid, and some people don't like that rigidity and things like that. And, you know, people call me nuts, and we'll see. But Joel to Miami, that sounds crazy, but it is possible. So I give you credit for that. And I'm going to keep my eye out on that, because that might be a solution, and Pat Riley's crazy enough to try it. My last question before we get you out of here, and I did not expect for us to talk for damn near 50 minutes. This is about to become a podcast on its own. I love to,
right, exactly.
I love to hear it. And again, Justin, thank you so much for the time. My final question is around the horn, right? So when you guys are doing it, how do you keep track, or do you keep track? Like, I'm a huge wrestling fan, so you might break some news to me, but how do you keep track of the scoring and everyone else and everything? Like, how does that work?
Well, see, the scoring is all up to Tony Reali. So when people are asking me, like, what's the scoring metric system there? The scoring metric system is Tony Reali. And it's just whatever he feels like who made the best points on a certain topic. But you're asking me, do I keep up with everybody else's points?
Well, no, I'm saying, like, do you see your points going up as you're talking, or can you keep track of everyone else?
Yeah. You so, like, it's really me sitting in a room by myself looking at, like, a teleprompter or a screen.
Yeah.
And so, like, what you see on TV is really like what I see. When you see the four boxes with the four faces, and sometimes it'll be just me on there talking, or a solo shot, or maybe it's like a side by side. So, like, whatever you see on TV is what I see on my screen when I'm talking. So I'm very aware of, you know, who's in the lead and who got what, who made what point at certain times. So, like, yeah, that I'm very well aware of.
All right, that is good to know. You see, when you on one of the most iconic sports shows ever, you know, try to get a little bit of insight. But one more time, Justin Tinsley, thank you so much for joining us. Senior sports and culture writer at ESPN. We just talked about it. You can see him on Around the Horn. Go check out his new book that I'm about to order from Amazon right now as we speak. It Was All a Dream, Biggie and the World That Made Him. And be sure to follow him on Twitter as well, at Justin Tinsley. Justin, thank you so much for the time, man. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate y'all for having me on, man. I thoroughly enjoyed this convo.
Just a few more moments between me, my voice, and your ears here on the NBA playoff preview. 11:40, the bet. Las Vegas, Adrian Hernandez here before we get out of here. Of course, special thanks to Sports Illustrated's lead senior writer for the NBA, one of the best in the business, Howard Beck. Thank you to ESPN and Around the Horn for letting us talk to Justin Tinsley, one of the best authors in the game, by the way. His new book on Biggie is absolutely spectacular. Before we get out of here, I would like to remind you, be sure to follow me on Twitter at AdrianRadio93 and at the Bet Las Vegas to keep in touch with us. And last week, we talked at length about the horrific shooting in Uvalde, Texas at the elementary school, and the 19 students, the 19 children, the kids that were killed, the teachers that were lost. And we talked at length because some things are bigger than basketball. And I just want to let you guys know, we'll be talking to you next Saturday, which will be June 11th, hours before March for Our Lives, which is a march that started from the kids who survived the Parkland shooting a few years ago to, simply put, march for their lives. That's why it's called that. And luckily, there'll be protests and marches all throughout the country. Here in Las Vegas, it's going to start at 10 a.m. at the Smith Center for Performing Arts. I believe that's at Symphony Park Avenue near downtown. You can sign up. It's for free. MarchForOurLives.com. We hope to see you there. Me, Lindsey Brown from the Playmakers, will be there next weekend, but you can hear from us Monday afternoon, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. with the Playmakers. And yeah, some things, it's a little uncomfortable, but let's be honest, things need to change. And since Uvalde, there's been 20 mass shootings. So some things are bigger than sports. We'll talk to y'all on Monday. We'll hear from you with it might be the final NBA playoff preview. Who knows? Next Saturday. Be safe this weekend and enjoy. It's 11:40 The Bet Las Vegas. Peace.